Hey guys, welcome back to Wisdom for Wealth TV. I'm Lelo and I'm so glad that you guys could join us. Today, we're having our very first book review. As you know, we've been reading Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money, and it's been an insightful book. It's a book that we've learned from. We've thoroughly enjoyed this book, and I hope that you guys are reading along. And when you get to reading the book with us, if you haven't been reading currently, just find this book review, hear what we had to say about it, and yeah, add your comments, add your feedback in terms of what you thought, even on social media. More than welcome to let us know. So today I'm joined by Lindo Villagazi. He is a member of the Wisdom for Wealth team. Matter of fact, he helps me quite a lot. So I don't want to say a title yet because I feel like we do everything anyway. But Linda really helps me a lot. And yeah, today I'm having a conversation with Lindo. We're going to be having a conversation around what we thought of the book and what we take out of it. Just bear in mind that we can't cover everything, right? We can't cover every chapter, but we're just going to do the best we can to speak about the things that stood out to us. And give you a bit of commentary and context in terms of where we are as a people so that you can understand what we think. But I hope that you guys enjoy this. You're going to be seeing Lindo quite a lot in the future. So yeah, guys, enjoy it. So hey, Lindo.
Hi, sawubona nompumelelo.
You're telling people my full name?
Yeah, starting with government.
Right,
Like, yeah,
right.
yeah.
Ach,
Oh,
man.
you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm excited. I'm excited for the first book review that we're doing. I've always sort of imagined reading books with other people.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I feel like books have a way of just jogging our minds and helping us see things in a different way. And it almost
Mm-hmm.
gives you access to people's minds, right? I
Exactly.
can't speak to Morgan Housel right now, but I've got a bit of an access to his mind because I read it.
Yeah.
But
Did
I
you read or did you, sorry to cut you off, or was it Audible?
I listen to the book.
Okay.
I listen to the book, and whatever stands out to me, I write a bit of some notes and things of that nature.
Uh-huh.
But before we get into
Oh,
that, how are you?
I'm well. I'm good. Um, Slightly tired from exercising and yeah, being a family man and yeah, all these other hats that I wear. But no, it's everything is well. Everything is going good. January is treating us well. It's the 25th namhlanje, so a lot of people are getting paid in South Africa. So yeah, I'm indoors the most of the day so that I don't get hit by cars. So, but I'm good. I'm good. I'm
Okay,
good.
cool.
Yourself?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm excited. But wanting to get into it,
Yeah.
overall, how did you find the book?
Overall, um, it's quite a different book. Let's start there, right? This is something that I was taught in Toastmasters that you must first give compliments and then come with the disagreements so that the compliments are more. Overall, the book is quite different, right? I haven't read more books around, or I was listening to it, so I haven't listened to or read two books that are around the psychology of money and the thinking around money, the mindset, and the heart set. So this was my first take on that, and I found that very interesting because as much as yes, finance is a technical pursued technical industry, he comes across as someone who wants to have a conversation around money through this book. And I love the fact that it's not something that he started now. Like when I went through his previous stuff, I saw that he had a blog, where he had like 20 paragraphs of like the actual titles that are in this book are actually the 20 paragraphs that he had just blogging about what he thinks about saving money, about reasonable, rational luck versus or luck and risk. All these other titles that are there, you find them in that. So it's essentially a work in progress type of thing. And it's quite nice to see that because most of the other books are never really like sequels in a way. It's okay, we have this book and then everybody's gonna buy it and like, it's gonna be a bestseller. It's gonna be on everybody's shelves, but it really doesn't go with the times. And then it doesn't. We just went through COVID, you know. It's not something that's gonna touch on those things. It's literally gonna be touching on the things that the author was going through when he was writing it or when she was writing it. But
This is
overall,
relatable.
overall, it's a conversation starter. Let's
Mhm.
start there.
Mhm.
It's very palatable and everybody can have a conversation around it. Everybody can have a conversation around seduction of pessimism, you know. Luck versus risk, you know. We were having a luck and risk conversation before this. It's everyone, it's not this high English, the thous and those and all of that that you can't really understand. It's palatable. What did you think about it?
I like that. And I think you make an important point when you speak about how relevant it is, right? It's relevant to the times that we live in. But I think maybe just to bring it a bit closer to home, it's relevant because I feel for me it was the perfect book to start the year with when we think of Wisdom for Wealth and what we stand for as a brand, right?
Gotcha.
So if there's something that is dear to my heart, and I always say this about finances, is that matter of fact, this week's blog or last week's blog, for those of you who are going to be
Yeah.
watching it, is that I wrote a blog about how we define wealth, right? And defining it beyond finances, we're looking at mindset and heart set, which is really our emotional health. So I got excited by this book because for me, it gave the groundwork for people to listen. So when I come and I speak to people about emotional health, and I come and I speak about mindset, and I come and I speak about, some of the skills, they understand that those things work together, right? Most people can't associate psychology with money, right? They almost see money as this thing that is just black and white. You either have it or you don't. But people don't
You invest or
understand
don't
that.
invest.
Yeah, people don't understand that, there's an entire psychology around finances, right? There's an entire psychology around financial markets and how investors behave. And so for me, this was a great entryway for us to really have a conversation, and a sustained conversation through the year. And I'm just hoping that people read this and they read it with an open mind. This is not to say that we endorse everything that the author thinks, but you don't get to where you're going without learning from the greatest minds that have written. So like anything in life, I always say this as well, just chew the meat and spit out the bones. So there'll be some things that are super relevant, and then there's some things that are a bit like, okay, cool. The context is not quite the same because I'm in South Africa. Things look a bit different. I was raised in the township. So there's certain things I understand in a different way. But
Yeah.
I
And
think,
also, oh, so it's just to cut you off, he actually
right,
does speak around that as well. That, you know, Forbes, for instance, let's make an example with Forbes. You know, we have this tendency of if we want to learn about money, let's go to the Forbes list and see who's the most wealthiest, and then those people are the ones who will have the answers. If you buy their autobiography, subscribe to their podcast or whatever type of material that they have, then you stand a better chance of being or walking towards the wealth that you desire. So he actually speaks about that in the book. I'm glad that you brought it up as well. That it's we mustn't have like a myopic view of this subject called wealth. It,
yeah,
it it will never work. You know, I'm not an expert at it, right? There are people who we might deem as experts, but they themselves don't see themselves as experts. But there's people who have done certain things who will never be on the cover of Forbes, will never be interviewed on CNN for their, savvy business decisions and savvy investments, but have done things. There's a Ronald Reed, the story of Ronald Reed and Richard Fasco. Ronald Reed was never known.
yeah,
He was literally came back from the army, comes back, he's a mechanic, he's a petrol attendant. Well, they call it gas in the States. But throughout that time, he he was just steadily investing to the point where when he passed away, he made all the millions, and then he makes the news. So it's never really a one size or like a myopic type of approach to it. And um moving away from this thing of Guti, yes, this person is wealthy, therefore there must be great advice that I can get from this person. Because even that saying what this person is wealthy, we're actually just looking at the external, and not really what how this person got the wealth, how they're managing it, how they're maintaining it. We're probably seeing the dress sense, the cars, the houses, the
I want to jump
smell.
in there. I want to jump
Hmm.
in there because I think what you're saying, and I think he speaks about this, he speaks about how, oh, he says so many things, right? He
Yeah,
speaks about
right.
how wealth is what you don't see, right?
Exactly.
And then he
Hmm.
speaks about, on the other hand, he speaks about how if you're going to learn about wealth, we sometimes assume that we need to learn from the people that look the wealthiest, but
Yeah.
it's dangerous to study human beings, like specific examples, rather focus on learning the key principles that are universal and apply in many instances. So look for patterns when you study wealth. It's not just about studying the richest person in the world. It's not just about studying the poorest person. It's about what are some of the patterns when it comes to wealth creation. We understand compound interest. It's not a respecter of persons. We
Mhm.
understand, you know, how certain things yield a return. It's just about studying the patterns, right? We understand
Yeah.
the role of endurance, the role of patience when it comes to building wealth. And I think what you're saying really speaks to that. But also what you're saying speaks to us not judging a book by its cover. And I absolutely
Old
love
saying.
I I
The
loved it
old saying. Hmm.
when he says that wealth is what you don't see. And this for me absolutely helped me because
Yeah.
I've never been the person that is easily admirable on the surface, right? Like
Yeah.
if you have to put me next to someone who's driving the fanciest car or whatever, I'm like, I don't know. I don't want Gucci sneakers. Like, I'm all right. Like, I like nice things. There's certain things I want. I like cars, right? There's certain things I like.
Yeah.
At this point in my life where I'm building, I'm like, well, I don't really want to buy Gucci sneakers right now. I'm going to use my money to do something else, and he speaks about how Ronald Reed was not an example while he was living. He was not a financial role model while he
True.
was living. And that was for me a penny drop because it was like, if you are looking to be respected, you are going to have to manage your finances in such a way that you need to be flashy, that you need to be seen, right? Because that's what you use money for. But if
Exactly.
you understand that wealth is the bank balance that people don't get to see, right? It's the watch that you don't wear. It's the clothes that you forgo, right? It's the holiday that you don't take. It's all of these things that in today's society, with Instagram and everything, those are not things that are grammable, right? Those are things that nobody admires. So because we live in an age of show and tell, we live in an age where put up a picture, put up a caption, put a song next to it, and all of that kind of stuff, building wealth becomes difficult if you
Yeah.
subscribe to what everybody else is doing, right? Matter of fact, if anything, I would say this book really made me realize how you need to be so in tune with yourself and your why for what you're doing, because that is the only thing that will keep you committed when markets change, when things happen that you couldn't predict, when COVID hits, when depressions, recessions, and all of that when stuff like that shows up that you're not prepared for, the only
Hmm.
thing that will keep you invested, the only thing that will help you to stay committed to building wealth, even when it looks like things are falling apart,
True.
is your why. It's why are you doing this, right? Why does it matter to you? And one of my mentors says this, and I don't want to digress. He says if your why doesn't make you cry, then the price of commitment will always be too high, right? If
Is he
your
a
why,
poet?
yeah, he's like, if your why doesn't make you cry, then the price of commitment will always be too high. And
Uh,
I know where I come from. I know I've seen poverty. I
mhm.
know I've seen people struggle. I don't want that for my son. I don't want that for my family. So
Yeah.
my why is set. It's
Ne?
set. It's no matter what happens, it's like we're investing, we're building, we're making wise decisions.
True,
And
true.
yeah, is there anything you
No,
want?
no, no, Def, Def. Um, I'm when you're reminding me of this quote, I'm also reminded of a quote. So let me pull one out. You don't get results by focusing on results. You get results by focusing on the habits and the behaviors that produce the results.
Amen.
So when we are
That's
talking
James
about,
Clear.
sorry,
Is that James Clear?
unknown, unknown.
James Clear. It's James
Probably
Clear.
James here, but this is something that I have on my phone.
Yeah,
Yeah, that like making sure that there's certain habits towards the why, as you were saying, because the why has to make you cry, correct? But in order for all of us to get to that point, there has to be behaviors and habits that direct us to that why. Because if we say this is the why and then we don't walk towards the why, then it's like we're dreaming, daydreaming essentially. And it makes no sense for us to just say, ah, no, this is my passion, this is my purpose. But our habits and our behaviors are not really speaking about that because that's who we are as human beings as well. We're a summation of our behaviors and our habits.
100%.
If you look at your day from the time that you wake up until you go to sleep and what you do, that is who you are. It's
100%.
someone else told me that if you were to go to your bank statement, oh wow, this is Zoom thing. If you were to go to your bank statement and look at your transactions, the most things that you invest your money on is who you are as well. So it's also true even in the financial sense. It's also true in our behaviors and what we choose to do on a day-to-day basis. But I think we've covered most of the positive parts of the book.
Yeah.
Maybe if we can look into things as
I want
well
to
that
ask you
we
a question
probably
though.
don't agree with. Yeah.
I want to ask you a question before we get into what we don't agree with.
Okay, go for it.
What did you think about his point around when he was a valet and the guy with the fancy car came through and he,
Attorney.
yeah, and then he discovers that this guy goes broke and he's like, he realizes that most people, firstly, people don't care about the car that you drive. People don't care about your stuff as much as you do. But he recognizes that people are actually searching for admiration and respect. What did you think about that?
Um, there's I don't fully agree with it. Don't fully agree. Yes, there are people who are lacking within themselves and therefore want to fill themselves with all these things that essentially won't fill the hole that they have. There's those people, right? And then there's just people who are just psychopaths, lid. Like outright psychopathic, narcissistic. They use people. They probably that guy was new to money from what I'm hearing him say because he was an attorney, I think senior attorney or something like that, and they were getting paid some large sums of no 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 no. It's the guy who invented the memory stick or memory something around memory.
Don't worry about it.
Yes. It's that guy, right? So probably he was in his room trying to find this thing, trying to make sure that this thing works without really having a social life. And then when this wealth just comes in, and then this person now all of a sudden has a social life. Then he wants to get to that point of, as in, I'm going to show you who I am, because I can see that you do not know who I am. So it gets to that point as well. But really, I think that guy was really, really, really dumb. It's a great way to introduce a book as well. Just to say, hey, when I was broke, there was a guy who was very wealthy, and this is what he did. But um, I don't really fully agree with that people in general
Mm.
are like that,
You
right?
know,
Yeah.
so I do agree with him.
Hmm.
And I agree. So I get what you're saying in terms of being psychopathic, but even then,
Yeah.
if somebody is
Mm.
narcissistic, if somebody, that's an emotional health thing. Nobody is born a narcissist, right?
Hmm.
Hurt people hurt people. Like,
Definitely.
it comes from somewhere. So I think what he's really pointing to, and for me, this was an illumination,
Hmm.
that if I had to sum up what he said there, I would rather say that sometimes when we buy flashy things and we're we're doing things that are a bit ostentatious and
Yeah.
opulent, sometimes the root of why we want it is because we have emotional needs that are unmet, and having those things is what helps us get those emotional needs, right?
Mm.
I noticed when you walk in, and I know this, right? So I'd be in a space where somebody would walk in.
Yeah.
Um, they drive a really nice car, and people automatically think that this person is the person to be next to, right? They admire
Yeah.
them, they respect them, they accept them, they want to be like them. Matter of fact, if you rock up, like, can I come sleep over your house? Can I? You're the person everybody
Too
wants.
much. Yeah.
You're the person everybody wants to be around, right? Because
Mhm.
it gets you respect. And if you don't check your own heart and you don't check what your unmet emotional needs are, whether from childhood, whether from your adult relationships, you can find yourself overcompensating in one area of your life. So finances is not the only way that people overcompensate. People can overcompensate with how nice they are to people. People can overcompensate with how hard they work. But some people, they genuinely overcompensate by having the nice car, by having, the nice house, the big house, and you want the big square footage. Sometimes it's trying to fill that hole, trying to fill those unmet needs. And I think for
Mhm.
me, that really, again, for me, I think a key pillar of why we do what we do is to
Mm.
understand that our financial behaviors, right? To go back to the whole results thing, our
Mhm.
financial behaviors are not independent of how we think. They're not independent of how we feel. And
No.
if finances present themselves as the tool that you can use that people will respect you for, you're going to use that. That's the
True.
thing you're going to use. You're going to buy the flashy clothes because people want to be next to you, right? So that's how you get your self-esteem. That's how you get
Yeah.
liked. And that's how I always say to people, no matter what happens, work on your emotional health because you just never know. You just never know if you're going to use money. I mean, I was that way. When I got better in terms of being a people pleaser, my money got better because I now didn't suddenly feel the need to be giving people things I didn't need to give them. I didn't feel the need to solve everybody's problem. I suddenly
Ooh.
had better boundaries because
Boundaries. Yeah, about to say. That's sorry to cut you off as well. It's just creating boundaries and making sure that when you're at a space where you can essentially build what you are looking for. Go,
100%.
you spoke about the why,
Mm.
that your why needs to make you cry. And if it doesn't make you cry, then in the future, I'm butchering your quote right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's around that. And if your why, you already established that this is your why, but at the same time, emotionally and mentally, or with just self-belief, you're
Mhm.
not where you want to be. It
100.
it it really just puts you aside of where you need to get to. Yeah, well, but where I was coming from with that was just looking at holistically. Um, holistically, he could have done better when it comes to explaining that, just talking about the emotional aspect as well. But yeah,
I don't
that's
think he
more.
could
I
have. I
think
don't think
so.
he could have. I think he did according to what he understood and what he knew. I think
Okay. There's also that. There's also that.
because
Where he
remember,
grew up as well. Ne?
so if you
Mm,
come from a place of affluence, there's something
yeah.
you don't know that a poor person gets to
But
experience.
you don't know exactly. It's
So
the
I can speak to the emotional health piece is because I knew that I was using money to buy people's affection,
yeah.
right? It was something I saw in my own life. So I think,
Right.
we're
Right.
giving him grace to just be like, look, I think you explained it to the best of your ability because that's your worldview and that's what
Yeah.
you've seen, but you haven't seen my world. You haven't seen what it means to grow up in the township like I did, where
Yeah.
they respect you for looking good, hey? Like I don't think anybody dresses better than people from the township.
Oh, bro. Like
I, I
that's
don't think
that's why
anybody,
it's a kind of a
right?
thing. That's why like you would go to a certain store and make sure that you age. Yeah, well, in my hood
Because
growing
it's
up, there's a uniform that like Malubeni Levi's. You must have a nice golfer t-shirt that's very bright, and then nice shoes as well.
and
Then
it's a brand.
that's the then you get respected from that, and a nice belt as well. So,
There's a psychology behind that, right? Because poverty has
mm,
a way of teaching people that they're unworthy.
uh,
It has a way of making people feel isolated and rejected. So then people are sort of like, okay, I need something to help me. And sometimes it's appearance. And if they can
mm,
get the nice car, they're gonna get the nice car, you know?
so
Um,
would you say that's the easiest route to actually, is that the easy route that we take as humans of wanting to, because essentially at the end of it all, we want to get this respect. There's this respect that's here. And then there's a route. There's an easy route of just, okay, let me buy a nice car so that I can get this respect, right? And then there's the route of why do I feel I need to buy a nice car? Or why do I feel I need to acquire something for me to gain this respect? Does my humanity not just like require a sense of respect just because I'm human and I'm breathing and I'm here? Is that so? Is that the more hardest route, or is that the easiest route, but people don't really, or we, including myself, don't really go for?
I think I don't think it's the easiest route. I
Hmm.
think it's a coping mechanism.
Mm.
I think when you try something and it works the first time, you do it again.
Yeah.
Keep doing it. It's like a drug, right?
Mm.
It's the way that you learn to medicate yourself. So in the book, Morgan Housel says something. I think this is chapter 19 when he's giving the summaries of the different chapters. And he
Hmm.
says, nobody really cares about the stuff you have, right? If you're looking for respect and you're looking for admiration, rather focus on being a kind and a humble person. That will get you the respect you're looking for, right? And I feel like that is the cheapest thing to do. Just be kind,
Yeah.
just be humble,
Mm.
right? But the reason why that is difficult to become, that really speaks to character. It's one thing to
Yeah.
be like, be kind, it's another thing to be a pleaser, right? So
Hmm.
being kind, being humble is a matter of character. And that is closely linked to whether or not we're healed, whether or not we're pursuing internal healing. So it looks easier to get the flashy car and get the respect because then you don't have to focus, or maybe I don't want to say you don't have to. You think you don't have to do the
Got you.
inner work to fill your own emotional needs, right? That's why I always say people go to therapy. I say Jesus and therapy, pray and therapy. But it's like do
Jesus
the
did it.
inner work. Yeah, do the inner work. Do the inner
Yeah.
work. People would be
Mm.
surprised how so much of their financial issues are really rooted in their emotional issues. And it's like
Mm.
doing the emotional work is hard.
Yeah.
It's very
Yeah.
difficult to do that work because it
It's
requires
not
you
the
to
easiest
face,
of rules.
it
It's
cause it requires you to face yourself in ways that you wouldn't have. But it is, I think, the most rewarding because then you can be kind, then you can be humble, then you can operate and exude the kind of character that will get you respect and get you admiration without you having to burn your pockets to get it.
so is it fair just to double tap on that before we go into another chapter? Is it more fear that then stops us from actually pursuing our um emotional health
I
in a
don't
way?
think it's fear. I think
Mhm.
it's ignorance. And when I say ignorance, I don't mean it as in a person being dumb. I
Yeah,
just, it's a person being unaware, right? It's
unaware of what?
you're unaware that you're hurting, right? Some
Mm,
people don't know that they're hurting. So we
ish.
see the symptoms, but they don't know what's really going on, right? So essentially, when you resort to materialism as a
Hmm.
way to medicate and to get your emotional needs met, you are dealing with the symptoms, but you're not dealing with the root cause. And
Oh,
that's
so like I
constantly
get
have
cut
to do it. You
the
constantly have
blood.
to
Yeah.
buy the new clothes, buy a new car, get a new house. If that's not big enough, let me get a bigger one, right? Because you constantly are medicating, but you haven't gotten to the root of what the issue is. And the issue is that thing in childhood that you haven't been wanting to deal with, kind of thing.
Yes, yes.
And
But
so I don't
at the
think
same time, can I not be afraid of dealing with that trauma? As much as I'm
you can.
unaware that I'm hurting right now, because, well, with everything mental, you can't really pinpoint it out to, okay, this person is bleeding and is bleeding onto other people. But they themselves will, well, other people will be able to see it, but they themselves have to admit and say, okay, I have a
Yeah.
problem, right? Yes, there's the ignorance part of actually saying, I'm buying all these things to fill something that really doesn't need consumerism to be filled by. It needs something else. That's the ignorant part. But hey,
Fear.
now we
It
are
could
in the
be.
journey. Get into
Yeah,
the
it could
journey.
be. It could be.
Let's,
But let's not
yeah.
digress. You know,
Luck and risk, girl. Luck and risk.
go ahead.
Utumogen
What were your
and risk
thoughts?
are siblings, you know? They are both, and the reality that the outcomes in life are guided by forces other than individual effort.
Hmm.
What do you think of it? Do you think, yes, there is individual effort, right? We do everything that we can. The only example that I can make right now is of studying and getting qualifications and all of that. That's your individual effort. And then there's luck, and then there's risk as well. Um, do these cancel out each other or do they complement each other? Because I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Does like
They're an
luck play
inevitable,
a role in financial success?
I think they're an inevitable part of finance, right? Because
Mhm.
nobody controls markets, right? And
Mm.
markets are controlled by people's expectations, right? So people have expectations about the future, and that's what guides investor confidence. That's what guides consumer confidence. So people make decisions in the present based on what they expect in the future. And if you have enough people thinking a certain way, right? Everybody thinks the price of something is going to go up, right? For instance, people think the price of oil is going to go up, for instance. And when they think the price, if sufficient amount of people think that, what they naturally are going to do is to buy more oil in the present. And by the rules of supply and demand, that is going to drive the price of oil up. So it's their thinking in the present that has driven the price anyway, from a psychological perspective, right?
Okay.
So what I'm trying to say is that when it comes to financial markets,
Yeah.
the element of luck and risk for me is really tied to unpredictable human thoughts and human behaviors. So people think in different ways and
Hmm.
people want different things, right? So I think inevitably there is going to be an element of risk because someone might do something and all of a sudden the stocks that you hold have lost their value, right? Or we might be overconfident and assume that the stocks that we're holding are gonna be, you know, worth a lot more tomorrow. And we could be wrong because the person who works in that company might decide to do something dumb and then get fired. And then all of a sudden we've bought all these stocks and we've got nobody to buy them from us.
Yep.
So I think those are things that are underlying within the market. They'll always be there. But I do think here's a principle is
Yeah.
that if you're going to be an investor on the market, right, you're going to need to firstly have longevity, right? If you want
Survival.
if you want to become an investor and you want to earn money tomorrow, you're
Yeah.
looking for a Ponzi scheme. You're not looking to be an investor. You're looking for a quick get rich quick scheme. And that's not what you get in terms of the market. I think when he speaks about luck and risk, though, what he's speaking about is nearly him saying diversify, right? So he says have enough in the market invested, but understand that if you get wiped out, have cash so that you are still able to stand tomorrow.
Mm, mm,
Because
mm.
markets are
Don't put all
unpredictable.
your eggs in one basket in a
Yes.
way.
So
Uh,
diversify, right? Hold the stocks, hold the cash. And he even says that his portfolio, he's got a whole chunk of cash. When he speaks
mm,
about Warren Buffett, he speaks about how Warren Buffett says he doesn't want to put the fate of the people who work for him at risk. So he holds a sufficient amount of cash. If you are a risky investor, you don't want to hold cash, right? You hold equities because in your mind, you're like, but you could just lose the value tomorrow like this. But cash, in moments where you need to be able to take advantage of certain things, you need cash. Cash becomes king.
yep.
So I think he's really speaking to hold cash, be prudent. Yes, invest, but don't be in it for the quick win. And I think
Gotcha.
when you are prudent, when you've got luck and risk factored in, then you're willing to play the long game because you've got a bit of cash. So
Mm,
it'll be able to boost you if your equities have just sunk, right? But if you're all invested in a high risk investment, if something goes wrong, you've lost everything and you can't participate tomorrow. So I think it speaks to, in essence, a level of humility, understanding that we don't know everything, we don't see everything, so don't play the game like a person who knows everything, right? You don't
okay.
see all
Yethu ukuphapha kahle kahle.
yes, take it
Yethu
easy,
ukuphapha.
diversify, learn.
Mhm,
But and I think for me, one of the reasons people end up in situations where they're completely wiped out is because they were playing for a quick win. They were playing for I want to get it tomorrow. And it's like,
mhm.
no, that's not how equities work. Give it time. Because
So
over time, the
cut you
market
off, Lelo. Sorry, so I know you're going on a tangent, love. Does the same thing then? Yes, there's the financial markets, the financial aspects of it. Does the same principle apply in, say, for instance, um, luck and risk in getting a 9 to 5, luck and risk in starting a business, luck and risk in being a freelancer, or any other way of any other legal way of getting an income. Do you think that the same principle then applies
I
in
do
all
think
these other factors?
I do think that there's certain things that feel safe in a 9 to 5. But
Hmm.
and I think having listened to different authors, to some degree, I think security can be an illusion.
Mm.
To some degree, the security can be an illusion, right? And I want to come back to what he speaks about because he speaks about how, and I want to phrase this correctly, he speaks about how understand the game that you are playing.
Yeah.
It's very dangerous to try and copy someone's strategy when you don't understand the game that they're in.
Hmm.
Do you understand the game that you're in? If you understand that over the long run, I want to be an entrepreneur, then you are willing to live with some of the luck and the risk that comes with it.
True.
But if you know that you're a person who's like, no, I just want to get my 9 to 5 in, I want to get my salary in, then you know that on the upside, you'll always have your paycheck, but you're not going to have
Yeah.
as much freedom. You're not going to have as much finances easily disposable to you, or you just need to be aware of what luck and risk looks like
Where you are, where
to,
you are.
for
Mhm.
your circumstances. But again, understand your why, right? I love it when he speaks about how we have this habit of calling everybody who invests an investor. And he's like, for him, he had to sit down and write his own financial mission statement. And he doesn't give it that word, but I call it that, right?
Mhm.
Because he needed to understand that he was a passive income investor. So that no matter what people around him were doing, he was not driven by what people were doing. He
Mm.
understood the game that he was in. If someone is a speculator and they just want to make a quick buck, that's their game. But don't play the game according to someone else's game, whether it be your career, whatever it is. That always speaks to your integrity. Who are you? What do you
Mm.
stand for? What works for you? Understand you. Because we live in a world where we always want templates from other people. We want other people to tell us what works, what doesn't work. And again, coming back to his point about humility, sometimes it worked for that person because they got lucky.
At that time as
At
well.
that time, it was the timing, it was where they were, it was time and chance that
Mm.
happened to them at that time. So be true to you. Be true to you. And yes, there'll always be luck. Yes, there'll always be risk, but there's also grace. I'm heavy on the grace piece. I'm like, there's also grace. I also think it's
You should have
absurd.
put that in. He should have put that in, actually.
Yeah, it's also absurd because I know people that have lost millions and recovered.
Hmm.
There's many of them. There's many of them, but that's not the point of the book. But that's what I'm saying. There's luck, there's risk, but there's also grace.
Hmm.
So if you do find yourself where you're on the other side of the spectrum where you've lost everything according to risk, build again, start over. But I think we're digressing. So I want to go back here.
Let's
Um,
go.
what did you think about him speaking about, the various examples of people who never had enough? Those examples that he makes of people who
Raj.
they just wanted to make a little bit more. They just wanted, it's almost like you will risk what you have for something you don't have. I think that's what he says, Warren Buffett says, right?
Mm.
And so
Mm, mm, mm,
what did
mm.
you think about that?
It reminded me of there's a friend of mine, right? We were in a funeral. Their relative there was a relative that was being buried. So I got to meet his parents that day. His father wasn't feeling well, and then his mother, like first time meeting this woman, he comes to me, or I come to her, and then she says something so profound. I actually even wrote it down. Never be foolish, like the dog with a stake in their mouth that goes to the river and then thinks that the stake that's in the river is another stake. Then let's go of the stake that's in their mouth to go and catch this other stake. And it just reminded me of that, because you look at the examples that he made, Rajat Gupta.
Yeah.
By all intents and purposes, this person was rich, like wealthy beyond, and he was in boards and meetings and rooms that a lot of his peers probably envied. But because, again, the emotional aspect, Uguti, like when is enough enough? I know Uguti, there's this thing of saying I want to get as much money as I can, but as much as you can get as much money as you can, what is your limit? What is like your morals and your values? Are they aligned with what you're saying at that point in time? Because you can get as much money as you can the right way, or you can get as much money as you can the wrong way as well. It reminds me of a lot of people, right? But essentially, there's also that. There's these people who it really just goes back to the emotional aspect of things. Like,
Check yourself.
when
Check yourself.
are you fulfilled? Because you are going to go back to the examples that we were making about cars, that you're gonna want, well, in that level, probably in that level, sorry, that was a chord. You still there, Lelo?
Yes, I am. Just give me a second.
Okay. Uh,
Sorry, my aunt came in, so she's uvulela amanzi. So I said I'll just wait for her to finish and then
Oh, okay.
so that it's
Okay.
not loud.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so
remember the project I was telling you about?
yeah, which one? Oh, the
In
home one.
Canada,
Yeah.
there's a delivery happening right now. So they were just letting me know. But it's fine. Let's finish this. What's our time?
We're on 12:40. So we started at like probably like 12:50. So we should wrap it up in about 10 minutes or so.
Okay.
Um, so
Let
I'm
me let
thinking
me
after you answered the Ponzi scheme, right? You like it reminds you of a lot of people. Uh,
hmm
I'm not gonna go chapter by chapter. I think for the confounding, the one thing that stood out to me, I can just share that is that um linear thinking is more intuitive than exponential thinking, right?
Yep.
Exponential thinking is
That's
counterintuitive. That's why we don't
it's
understand.
4, right?
Yeah, that's chapter 4. So I'll just pick out that. And then chapter 5, getting wealthy versus staying wealthy
Thank
requires
you.
survival. And then yeah, I don't think we can get to everything.
That's and let's not gun as well for like 10 minutes because we're probably not gonna we're probably now gonna be going
Too fast.
each. Just
I need to be
um
out at one
maybe
though.
yeah, let's wrap it up in like 5 minutes or less.
Okay.
Yeah, let's wrap it up in 5 minutes or less, and then it should be fine. I think we have 12 minutes is more than enough.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can continue. I think I'm still recording.
All right.
Um, do you want to continue your point?
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about
So you were saying
um
it reminds you of a lot of people.
yes, yes, yes. We made the example of the people who try to fill themselves with material as well. And I think those people as well never really they got the skill set right. They got probably the mindset right, but they failed when it came to, the heart set that, okay, now I'm making hundreds of thousands of US dollars because this person was coming from the poorest of poorest areas in Kolkata, India, right? And if you were to go to that place where they come from, where they are right now, is a huge shift. And there's this thing of just never really getting satisfied with what you have. And I know that like that's also a bit tricky because some people think that being satisfied means, mediocre, but not necessarily so. You can be at that level of Rajaj, at Gupta. It's funny that his surname is Gupta.
South African inside joke. It's a South
But
African
yeah,
inside joke.
it's a South
And it
African inside
happens,
joke.
and he happened to have worked at McKinsey.
Well, but at that level, again, this social comparison thing, and we think that it hits people who are only on social media, but it really cuts across everyone on every socioeconomic status. That person was in boards with McKinsey, in boards with um, what was the bank that Warren Buffett wanted to buy? Uh, that bank. What he was on those conversations, but still within himself, he felt like he compared himself. Let's start there. He compared himself. He even has a YouTube interview actually that's out. I checked it out. People can check it out as well. Lelo, is your Are you on mute or what? I'm not hearing you.
No, I'm not.
Okay. No, I saw your lips moving. I was like, hey, bo. It didn't sound, didn't sound. So back to Gupta.
Yeah.
Within himself, he really dealt with the skill set because he got there because of his skill set, obviously. He dealt with the mindset. He got to the rooms. He stayed in those rooms for quite a long period of time because of, that mindset. But just that one day when he was in the meeting,
Mm.
and then they say this is what's going to happen, and then it caught up with him actually, his whatever he did not deal with caught up with him at his pinnacle. So, and that's the danger as well, that if you don't really deal with certain things right
Yes.
now where you are, it'll catch up, and you will win, right? You will get the W's, you will get the promotions, you will get the doctorates, get the profits and making turnover that's 20 million plus, right? But everything that you've never dealt with at that level, even on a lower level, always comes up. And
Yep.
when it comes up, it catches you with your pants down. And that's essentially what happened with this person. It's something that he really never dealt with. And I really believe that it's within the emotional aspect, the heart set.
Yeah. 100.
He really did not fully dive deep um, into his financial trauma as well, coming from Kolkata. Kolkata is worse than South Africa, right? Like we're all poor, but Kolkata is, I've never been, I've only seen it on YouTube videos and documentaries, but it's worse. And if you're coming from that environment, there's a lot of things that you need to heal from. And this person was in his 60s.
Mm.
So he had lived for over 50 years without dealing with whatever he needed to deal with, to the point where it caught up with him where it was not supposed to even happen.
Yeah.
And that's the sad part about it. But what do you think? What do you think about that part?
I think for me, it's you need to know why you're doing this
Yeah.
so that you can know when you have arrived. Like for me, it's that. It's like you need to know your appetite so you
Yeah.
can know when you're full. You need to know. Like it's almost like why were you setting out to do this thing, right? And that's the difference between just making money because you're just addicted to money and money becoming a tool in your life for whatever reason it needs to be a tool for, right?
Mm.
It's like, how do you know when you have arrived at that point? How do you know when you have reached where you need to reach? Where I don't need to sacrifice everything I've got for just one more, for just a little bit extra, right? It's not like we're talking about a person who didn't have anything. He had everything.
Everything.
So I think for me that was a learning and something that really humbled me to just be like, hey, check yourself. And it's not always trauma from the past, you know. I think trauma drives people in different ways. Sometimes it helps them get successful, but the question is, can you stay successful?
Yeah.
Right? And that's the question that he asked when he says, you know, getting rich versus staying rich requires a different skill set, right?
So,
He speaks about how to get rich, you need that ambition, go for it, take risks, right?
right. Yeah.
To thrive, right? But the moment you get it, you need to be frugal. And he reminds me of another financial book where it says frugal, frugal, frugal.
And paranoia.
Yeah, so you need to be a lot more frugal. It's about how long do you survive? So I thought
Exactly.
that was really insightful. But I think, something else that dawned on me that I really liked about this book is that, he speaks about compound interest, right? It's chapter 4 that when he speaks about confounding
Compound,
compound.
or confounding
And
compounding. Yes, yes,
yes,
yes, yes.
and there's a portion there where he says this, and I just want to drop this and, we can move on. He speaks
Yeah.
about how one of the reasons it's very difficult for people to become investors is because they don't it's not intuitive to think exponentially, right? Like it's not intuitive to learn to the power of mathematically. So it's easy to be like 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4, and you get the answer. But the moment I say to you 4 um, squared,
And
4 to the cubed, 4 to the fourth, 4 to the fifth, 4 to the sixth, and I go on and on, it becomes very difficult for you to tell me what that answer is, because
yeah.
linear thinking is easier than exponential thinking. And,
Mhm.
you know, that's for me, that was something that was a good point to make, right? Especially when you speak to young people about finances, it's really to say to them, I want you to start thinking about wealth creation as a form of compounding. I want you to think about exponential formulas when you think about it. I particularly loved it when he speaks about Warren Buffett and how
Oh,
the majority of his wealth came after the age of 60. And this is a person who's been investing from the age of 11. Now, I just won't say, I don't
mm.
know. I don't know about that. Like, I sort of felt conflicted listening to that, because a part of me was like, people don't want to wait
Easy,
that long to
man.
get
In 10
rich.
years.
People
In
don't
10
want to
years.
get People don't want to wait that long to get rich. Like, hello. But at the same time, I understood the point that he was making, right?
Yeah.
To be like, but I'm like, guys, matter, that's like 50 years odd. Like, but again, he's got his own why.
Longevity. Longevity. I
Got
think we
his
were
own
talking.
why.
Hmm.
Yes. And then remember, he makes the point about how Warren Buffett had three guys, right? It was Warren Buffett, it was Charlie Munger, it was the other guy, and I forget his name.
Sold.
And
The one who sold, yeah?
yeah, and when they ask Warren what happened to him, he's like, he was just he was in a rush. He was in a
Imagine, right?
rush. And because you're in a rush, you end up taking on a lot more debt because you
Mm,
want to finance things quickly, right? He was playing a different game.
true.
He was playing a different game.
True.
So know your
Did he
game.
understand it? Did he not understand it? Is a question for another day.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
maybe just to wrap up, um,
Yeah, we
I'm
don't want to
gonna
finish this entire book. People also need to just
read it.
read it or listen to it for themselves.
What is the last thing you would share about this book that hit you in a deep way, or just any point that stood out to you that you want to say something about?
There's a lot. There's a lot, hey. But for one, for this purpose of this question is really not humility. Let's taking your time in doing things. I think most of the chapters in the book speak about that, speak about the patience, that it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in 5 years' time. With others, it's not going to happen in 10 years' time. Probably it'll happen in 30 years' time. If you look at Warren, if he got most of his wealth after 50 and he started at the age of 10 or 11, that's 39, 40 years straight, consistently so. And then that speaks to the compounding as well. But the patience within your why as well is also important because that allows you to stay on par, stay on the path, and continue doing what you set out to do in your why with your behaviors and everything else that you want to do in that regard. Patience is very important. I think that's one of the points that come out for me that just stick out like a sore thumb. On your side?
I like that. I like that. I think for me, it was him speaking about how, and I can't remember what chapter this was. If I'm not mistaken, it could be chapter 16. I'm just looking at my,
Mm.
or chapter 15. Yeah, it's chapter 15 where he speaks about costs versus fees, right? And he
Ah,
understand that there are costs to investing, right? And
mm,
some of those costs are not monetary. There could be volatility, there could be uncertainty, there could be risk, regret, all of that kind of stuff. And he's like, but when you become an investor, treat those things as costs, not as fees, right? Because, hold on, am I saying it correctly?
read
Yeah,
your notes.
no, he's correct. I'm correct. And I
Okay.
think when he says that, he's saying treat these as the price of admission to becoming an investor.
Mm.
versus these things becoming penalties for becoming investors, right?
True.
So you don't want to deal with the risk. You don't want to deal with the volatility. You don't want to deal with, some of the stress and whatever that comes with it. That's how you're treating that as punishment. You're treating that as a penalty, but understand that there will be some costs to this thing. But those costs are not penalties. They just are the right of admission to becoming a successful investor. And
True.
I think for me, I loved it because I think it just really speaks to how building wealth is going to cost you something. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it,
Mm.
right? That's what makes it so difficult. It's it's not easy to do it because it's going to require some sacrifices. It's going to
Yep.
require you to take some risks. It's going to require you to, to endure some volatility and uncertainty. But I understand that that is what you pay for you to be able to enjoy something in the future.
Yep.
And together with that lesson on patience, and I think those things tie together nicely, is that sometimes you're going to have to wait it out.
Yep.
You're gonna have to wait it out. Like if you're gonna be a fly by night, that's okay. That's the game you want to play. But if you want to build generational wealth, you need the long game. You need endurance, right? But you also are gonna have to understand there's gonna be costs to this thing. It's not gonna be free. And I think it's a life principle, right? Anything worth having is gonna cost you something. But that is not punishment. That is not so that it can discourage you from making the investment. It's actually to encourage you to keep going. And so, yeah, guys, I hope that you guys have enjoyed this. I hope that this was helpful to you. And I hope that you guys will read the book, drop your comments, let us know what you thought of the books, of this particular book and what stood out to you.
Yep.
We will release the February book of the month very soon. So keep your eyes peeled on all of our social media platforms. And we will be back next month again to give you guys a review of the book of the month. I hope that you guys have a lovely one, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye.
Bye bye.